3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, we are here live at the 46th annual SCDAA conference in Baltimore, Maryland. And as you can see, we have some very, very special guests. I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you. As always, before we get started, we will be taking your questions live, so please leave them in the comment section and we'll get to them a little bit later. But for now, who are you guys?
I don't know. Okay. Hi guys, my name is Jordin Sparks and I am a singer and an actress, and I am a sickle cell advocate and warrior.
Awesome.
My name is Dr. Marie Mariam. I'm an adult hematologist oncologist. I practice in Connecticut, but I'm also, very importantly, the Chief Medical Officer of the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America.
Hi everyone, I am Beverly Francis Gibson, and I am honored to serve as the President and CEO of the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America.
Awesome. Well, thank you ladies for joining us. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having us.
First, Jordan, I have to ask you,
Yes.
before we get into sickle cell talk, you're a new mommy.
Yes.
Why do you have so many things going on? And
Yes.
it's amazing. How are you feeling?
I feel good, tired.
Yes,
Just
yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
tired, but I feel really good. It's beautiful. I've always loved kids. I've always loved their energy. I love being around them, and just empowering them and encouraging them. And I knew if I ever had the opportunity to be a mom, that I would love it. And I really do. I adore it. He's so great. And I'm like, he's in New York with grandma, and I want to cuddle him right now, and I can't.
He's so cuddly.
I know.
You see my Instagram.
Just a squish. Yeah.
So what are you doing here?
I'm actually representing Generation S, and it's a really cool program that SCDAA, it's a tongue twister for me, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
The SCDAA and Novartis have come together for, and so you go to joingens.com and you can share your story. So basically what I'm doing is I want to help people change the narrative in the face of what sickle cell disease is. You can't tell by looking at a person if they have it, and I think there are a lot of people that walk around and you don't know what somebody's going through, but in this case you really don't know if they're in pain, you don't know what's going on. And my stepsister had sickle cell disease. She passed earlier this year, and after that I was really inspired to talk more about it, because there's just not as much awareness as there needs to be, and I'm just very happy to be a part of this. That's why I'm here today, to talk about my story, my own story of how I've dealt with it and being touched by it, but also to represent in any way that I can.
So what was it like for you growing up with your sister having sickle cell? Was that something that, like you said, a lot of people don't know, they can't see it. Was that something that you discussed in your household, or how did that work?
So it's a little bit different. She was my stepsister, so I actually didn't grow up with her. My mom got remarried about 4 years ago, so our relationship was very new. And because of just how we lived apart from each other, we didn't live in the same place, I only got to speak with her through FaceTime. Mm-hmm. But in those moments that I did, there were days when she was very vibrant, and she was 16 years old. There were days when she was very vibrant and she was okay and she was good and she had lots of energy, and then there were those times when I could really tell that she was hurting and she was in pain, and it looked like just speaking was exhausting for her. And I just got goosebumps, sorry. Seeing her in that pain when she was so young, and you just couldn't tell by looking at her that she had something like that. It really affected me. It makes my heart hurt just thinking about it now, and it affects so many different ages and men and women alike, and I wanted to know more. I didn't know a lot when I found out that she had it, and then I started learning more, and I was like, I want to do something more than just that, and there needs to be more done. So this opportunity came along to be able to represent this, and I'm not only doing it in honor of her, but I'm doing it to educate myself and others too.
Can you tell us more about what Jordan was just explaining, why there's pain, what are these crises that we see when someone is going through, or someone has sickle cell disease?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things we want to sort of educate the public about is how relatively common sickle cell disease is. Even though it's considered to be a rare disease, it actually affects probably more than 100,000 Americans. And most people are living with it silently because, as Jordan said, you don't know that the person is experiencing pain. And as you put it, the most common symptom associated with having sickle cell disease are these episodes of severe excruciating bodily pain that can happen at any moment. You can be feeling fine at one moment, and the next moment you have severe pain that's debilitating, and it might land you in the hospital or emergency department. In terms of the anemia that it causes, because the red blood cells are fragile, they don't circulate well, they get stuck in circulation, causing blockages and pain. But they also break open, they don't live as long, these red blood cells. So individuals are anemic and they get very tired, they need blood transfusion. So what's important, I think, to understand is that this is something people are born with. You can't catch it, but you can certainly pass it on. So it does tend to run in families. But the only way to know for sure whether or not you have sickle cell disease is to get tested for it, talk to your doctor about it, because even though you might not think that it runs in your family, it could, and you're just not aware.
I want to go through some quick myths with you, just so we can be clear about different things. So if someone has the trait, sickle cell trait, can they have those pain bouts?
That's a really important question. So sickle cell trait is not considered a disease, and it does not cause pain. However, under very extreme circumstances, like very high altitude, dehydration, we've seen in people in the military who have been stationed in deserts, who are dehydrated and under really hot conditions, that they can have what resembles a pain crisis. But generally speaking, the 1 in 12 African Americans who carry the sickle cell trait and probably don't know it will never have any complications associated with it. But it's important to know if you carry the trait, because you run the possibility of then having a baby with sickle cell disease and not being prepared for it.
Which was my next question. So if if I have sickle cell trait and my partner does not, is it still possible that our child can have sickle cell disease, or do we both have to have that trait?
So the answer actually is yes. And the reason is because there are other types of traits that affect red blood cells that aren't necessarily sickle cell trait. But when they're combined with someone who has sickle cell trait, can result in something that looks just like sickle cell disease. It's called beta thalassemia trait or thalassemia trait. And a lot of people carry thalassemia trait and don't know it. So the best thing to do is to go to your doctor and ask for a test, not just for sickle cell trait, but for any red blood cell trait.
And so, Beverly, can you tell us more about the SCDAA and what you're currently doing to educate everyone about sickle cell?
Definitely. I will tell you that SCDAA has been around for 46 years. We're the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America because our goal is to advocate for individuals, families, caregivers living with sickle cell disease. We also help our member organizations, which we have 44 nonprofit organizations across the United States, and they're providing direct service, advocacy, and care to families and individuals living with sickle cell disease. We also advocate for legislation to support patients and families living with the disease. And I will tell you, our ultimate goal is to have a universal cure for sickle cell disease that we could all celebrate with our constituents across the country, and I would say globally.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be so amazing.
Yes.
And I know you have a personal story with sickle cell, though you don't have it, but it was in your family. Can you share that with us?
Sure. When I was in high school, I have a cousin who's since passed away, and I remember my mom calling and letting me know that Vincent had passed away. And the thing that was tragic was that in my family, we never discussed it. I knew that he was sick because he couldn't play, and I grew up in the Caribbean, so it's very hot.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times when he couldn't play, his eyes were really yellow and jaundiced, from my recollection. But the thing that was striking for me was that we never talked about him. To this day, we've never talked about how he died or what was the cause of death. And I will tell you, when I was accepted as the president of SCDAA and the announcement went out to families and friends, many people actually contacted me to say I didn't know that the disease, sickle cell, still existed. And even more so, I didn't even know there was an organization nationally that is advocating for people who are living with sickle cell disease. So for me, it's personal.
Yeah.
And it's also because I feel a deep commitment to do this on behalf of all the families and all the individuals who feel like they're living in hopelessness and darkness, and they have no one to fight for them. And I want them to know we're fighting for them every day, and we believe in them, and that they have people that really support them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. And I think so. My next question would be going in that route with for all of you. What do you think is the best way for someone to support a loved one or a friend, family member with sickle cell?
I think in my experience that I had, it's hard when people don't understand it because they're not around it. I didn't know myself how to comfort my stepdad or Brianna, that was her name, in general, just because I didn't know. Like, I didn't know how it felt. I'd never been in the hospital with somebody who had it, and I think the understanding needs to be there, just you can be there and just be understanding that something is happening. You don't have to be, educated in every single thing, but to be able to lend an ear and to be understanding, I think that counts for a lot as well, just because you can't tell by looking at somebody, again, if they have it, and that's kind of hard to understand when you're like, well, my knee hurts, you see the bruise on my knee, it hurts, but you can't see, the crisis that's going on, you can't see the blood, not being able to get to certain organs, and so just being there for somebody in general is, and I'm sure there's other things as well, but from my experience, I just wanted to say, like, I'm there for you, I'm there. I know that you're hurting. I might not understand it all the way, but I know that it's real. Like, acknowledging that it's real, I think, is huge.
Nice. Yes, definitely. I would also add one of the main things, one of my main agendas since I've joined SCDAA is to also increase awareness about the disease. And a lot of the work that we're doing, Generation S Project, the initiatives that we're doing with Black doctors, Ebony, the goal is to raise awareness about the disease. Again, we have to get people talking about this because there's so many people dying needlessly because no one's talking about this. And like I said, my own family did not talk about this, right? So if we could expand the knowledge base and the information that's out there about sickle cell disease, encourage people to get tested, encourage people to seek help, because there are also people refusing, for obvious reasons or other reasons, to go to the hospital when they're in crisis. So encouraging and getting all that information out there so people have it when they need it is a big part of what I'm after.
And if I could just, I'm sorry, you mentioned Join Gen S, and that's the cool thing that I'm actually part of, see my shirt. Join Generation S, and so basically we're encouraging people, from kids to adults, to share their stories so that we can change the face of it. Like, oh, somebody that you wouldn't think looked like they had it, and you can go on joingens.com and you can share your story. Please go share your story. If you have it, and maybe it's like her family and you haven't talked about it, this is your opportunity to be able to get in front of the camera, and you don't have to feel judged or whatever your hesitations are, but you can share your story and get it out there, because the more people that share it, the more understanding comes out, the more that people go get help. So yeah, I'm sorry I didn't jump in.
You're fine. And I would also just add, having a face to the disease also helps when we're fighting for legislation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that people recognize that it's something that impacts everyone, and that's important too.
I would just add, to piggyback on what you said, that what really differentiates this disease from many other chronic disease states is that it's intermittently disabling. Okay, so like I said earlier, someone can be feeling fine one day and then be in severe pain in the hospital the next day for a week or sometimes a month or longer. And when you're a child, what does that mean? That means that you're missing school.
Yes.
When you're a teenager, that means that you're missing graduation and prom. When you're older, it means that you're away from your children for a little while. And I think that the village that you build around you is very important, so people understand that you're going to get back on your feet when you get home from the hospital or when you recover from one of these crises, but it's going to take time. I can't tell you how many moms who are my patients with sickle cell disease that when they go into the hospital, grandma or somebody will take care of the baby. And then when they're discharged, when she's discharged and goes home, they plop the baby right back in her lap. And like, no, you've got to give her some time. You got to get food home. Just understand that. Yeah.
I like that. I know we have live questions, so I'm gonna segue back to the live camera. Candace. Hey guys.
All right, we have plenty of questions, plenty of comments. a lot of our sickle cell patients are really appreciating this discussion. The first question is for Jordin, that we understand that you lost 4 people who were close to you, including your stepsister, all in a short amount of time from each other. How did you handle that grief and mourning? And what can you tell our users?
Ooh, you know what? It's really crazy because I still don't think I've fully been able to have that moment just because it all happened at the same time, and I was also in the end stages of my pregnancy, so I had to kind of, you know, put that away in a box and focus on not being stressed for the birth that was coming. But I do think for me, it all happening, it's crazy. As you get older, it happens more and more. And I know I was told that when I was young, you know, you'll see when you're older, you know, some people might not make it with you. And I wasn't expecting that to happen. My cousin, my 2 really close friends, and then my stepsister all passed within 2 weeks of each other. And it was really hard, and it still is. And there are moments when I'll just tear up out of nowhere, and actually being a part of this has been a sort of cathartic experience for me to help acknowledge that she did pass, and also to deal with the grief. I was on a phone call talking about this event, and I got really choked up because she was 16, she was young and vibrant, and she actually was one of the she was one that experienced being out of school for like 3 weeks out of the month. You know, she was in the hospital for a very long time, for her entire life that she was here, and it's hard to grasp that. Like, it's really hard to grasp that she wasn't able to experience a lot of things, and then in turn that made her very shy. She wasn't socially awkward, but she was shy, and you know, I wish I could have taken her out to just, you know, have fun and just have one of those good days. And my mom and stepdad actually took her to, you know, she was a model for a day, and, you know, they took her shopping, and she got, you know, the shoes and the whole thing, and it was amazing. But I'm still dealing with it, and I think that is the most honest answer that I can give you, because it's, everybody deals with grief in their own way.
I have a question before we go back live. With you saying she was in the hospital 3 weeks out of the month, and I'm sure there are other patients that are like that, are there resources or anything in place for patients as far as helping to pay these bills, helping to get back on their feet if they don't have a support system at home? What can they do, and where can they look?
So I think to answer that, you should go to your state.
Okay.
States usually have protections for children to ensure that they get the education that they need to, regardless of whether or not they have a disability. So there are a lot of state aid programs and educational programs that can be put in place to ensure that perhaps that young child needs to be taught or tutored either in the hospital or at home while they're recovering. So I would start with your state, wherever you live, and see what resources are there. And then there are always your community-based organizations. As Beverly says, SCDAA has 41 chapters across the country, and they are a valuable resource to be able to let you know on the ground in your particular community what is available.
Okay, I know we need to wrap pretty soon, but we have so many questions, so I'll try to find just a few. But there are so many people identifying with what we're speaking about here. One in particular, first of all, we have Myrtle Ingram, who says her condolences to you.
Thanks, Myrtle.
And we have another user saying that Adrian Samuels, I just found out my grandson has it, and he's 3 weeks old. He's 3 weeks old, and the mom is very overwhelmed. How can the family help with this 3-week-old baby?
So I think that having been a mother to a newborn myself, it's an overwhelming time.
Yes.
There's a lot of information being thrown at you, even if you have a healthy baby with no diagnosis. So I think what the family can do is go to the doctor's visits with the baby and the mom, because mom is not going to be able to retain all the information that she gets during that 30-minute or 60-minute doctor's visit. Go in there with a notepad, write down what the doctor says, formulate questions ahead of time, and be that resource. you also have to understand that taking care of a child living with sickle cell disease or any chronic disease is a full-time job in many ways. And there can be sometimes caregiver burnout. And so even the most well-intentioned, it happens, you know? So giving the mom time to herself or the dad time to himself is really important as well. So that's what I would say to answer that question.
And I think as well, being a mom, like you said, is overwhelming. You don't have to feel guilty for feeling overwhelmed. Like, it is so much, because I'm still a little overwhelmed, but the emotional impact as well. She's really not going to remember any of that. You're right, because I remember sitting there and they were telling me stuff about the newborn screening, and I just was weeping because they were trying to get the little sample, and he was wailing and I was weeping and I had no idea what she said. It went right over my head. So don't feel guilty. Just experience your emotions as they come. Like let them come. Let them come.
And I would also encourage her to, wherever she's living, reach out to resources in her community. And if not, call us at SCDAA, because then we can connect her based on where she lives to that community-based organization in her community, because there are lots of resources out there that many people don't know about.
And one more part to that, I think it's important to know that most babies born in this country with sickle cell disease now live into adulthood and well beyond.
Yeah.
It's very different from 10, 20, 30 years ago, where most kids did not reach the age of 18. Most do, and people are living into their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond now. And it's all about getting the proper care, getting the proper education. So don't think of this as anything other than something you didn't expect, but you're just going to manage it. And it's a chronic disease, and it's going to be well managed.
Let's do one more.
Yeah, one more. And until I get to that one more, there are just so many people saying, thanking us for this conversation. Hey, family has to talk about it. My sister has it. My daughter has it. I'm dealing with sickle cell. You name it. But I think a message that we could probably get to everyone, and this question is for Jordin, if you were to, tell our users how they can get their story out, what would you say?
I would say to go to joingens.com right now, and specifically because it's up right now, and you can go and you literally just enter your name and age, you click it, you share your story, and then it's put up there on the site for everybody to see. Everybody can view your story and it can be heard. That's the great thing about this, is what we want is for your story to be heard. We want it to be shared and be known. You can be crying in your story. You can be happy in your story. You can do it however you would like. It's up to you, really. It can be as short or as long as you want, I think. So I would say to do that, and also to not be afraid to talk about it to people that you trust. I think it takes a village in raising a kid. It takes a village in helping somebody understand what they're going through and deal with something. So if you trust somebody, tell them too if you haven't spoken about it. And I think as well to reach out to the resources too and see how you can get involved in your local chapter, and how you can influence your area, because it only starts with one.
Yeah.
It starts with one, and then the ripple effect happens. So I think that's what I would say. Is there anything else?
I would agree.
Well, thank you, ladies,
Thank
for joining
you.
us. Guys, as always, if you still have questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section and we will get back to you on them. Until next time, we thank you for joining us.